Hello and welcome to the Divorce Dadvocate, where we help dads create a healthier and less traumatic divorce for themselves and their children. Today, I am especially excited about my guest. But before I introduce him, I do want to remind everybody of the Dad's Divorce Blueprint class that is coming up beginning on May 9th. If you will go to dadsdivorceblueprint.com, there's some special pricing for it right now. Look, if you want to create just a healthier process, less traumatic for yourself, your children, come out on the back end and rebuild your life in a more positive and beneficial manner, this is the class for you. Thousands of people have been through this course. I'm facilitating this, but this has been around for decades and it is proven effective. And so I hope you'll join us. That's dadsdivorceblueprint.com. All right. So on to our guest today. He is a life coach, speaker, author. I mean, this guy's got it all. He works with clients all over the world, and his mission is to improve the success rate of marriage to 90%, which is a tall order. After seeing his mother and father divorce and experiencing his own divorce, he dove deep into studying gender dynamics. And through his study, he has created a surefire method to help people create great and lasting relationships. His first book, is titled The Sex Education You Never Received, available on Amazon. Well, that's perfect for me because I never received any sex education, period. But that's a whole different podcast. And his second book is The Sacred Bedroom, to be released soon. That will show married couples how to keep their marriage strong through the sustainable use of sexual intercourse. And that is going to be a fascinating one too. Archer Avelin, thanks for being on the show today.
Hey, Jude, thanks for having me. It's good to be here with you guys.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So tell us just a little bit about your story. I mentioned in your intro about your parents' divorce. My parents divorced also. I was never, ever going to get a divorce, which was probably part of the reason why I stayed in such a bad marriage for so long. But tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, I mean, very similar to you. I mean, went through college, was pretty happy-go-lucky, never really thought anything about, any real challenges with women or anything like that. I mean, I felt like I was okay with them. I didn't even know that, people talked about gender dynamics. I didn't know that there was like a pickup community, there was a seduction community and all of this. And, I just was a relatively normal kid, and I wound up getting married shortly after grad school. And I didn't, boy, I wish, that I could have gone back to tell myself, because, like you, I said, I'm never going to get a divorce. I think I'm going to work it out. And, problems did start to come up in my marriage. And, even my wife at the time said, yeah, oh, we'll never get a divorce. And, but I guess it was like in September of 2011, we were in the kitchen on a Saturday morning, and she comes up to me and she says, I don't love you anymore. And
Wow.
it wasn't, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. It was just, I don't love you anymore. And, I was obviously in shock, and we went through, I mean, I went through, some real challenges with it. Tried to save the marriage. I even invested in like save your marriage coaching, and that's not what it was called, but I'm glad that I did it. It didn't save my marriage, but in a way it kind of saved me. It kind of helped me start to focus on things. And basically in January, my wife left, and the deal, she took like 63% of my daughter's time with her.
Mm.
Um, and, it defined for me a new nightmare, literally a nightmare. Like, so when I have nightmares that I don't know where my daughter is, and I can't find my daughter. And, you know, we've all heard the statistics about how kids from divorced families are up for, much higher suicide risk, you know, obviously all sorts of bad things are supposedly happening to divorced kids because they don't have a father around to kind of protect them. And, if you think about hens and the rooster, it's a lot harder to kill the hens if there's a rooster around. So any rate, fast forward to I guess a little bit after the divorce, I said to myself, I said, you got to figure this out and just start working through this, start improving yourself. And I really, when I looked back at the marriage, I mean, it wasn't that great of a marriage to begin with. Like you, I was probably looking at it with, rose-colored glasses on, but we weren't really that happy. I mean, she was kind of like literally a wet blanket over me, and I think she kind of knew that. And maybe in some way she was doing me a favor by seeking a divorce, but
Right. So it's interesting
yeah,
that you say it's we don't know what we don't know, right? We don't know
right.
about relationships. We just may have not been taught about any of that, and then we're literally broken wide open because the majority of us, now it wasn't in my case, but in the majority of us, we are the ones that are what you would call the dumpy, right? The 70, something like 70% of women are the ones that file for divorce. And no matter what the circumstances are, that creates a dynamic that what I have found, and maybe you can elaborate on this too, is for men to be what you described, like, wow, I want to figure this out. I want to really understand this. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so how do I, move forward? So that, you mentioned has led you into gender dynamics. So talk a little bit about that. What, if you could first just describe what gender dynamics are and kind of like the sphere out there, what's happening in gender dynamics.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to describe it in like 2 words, I would say yin and yang. If you think of the standard yin and yang symbol, the white and the black, I guess the white represents the masculine and the black represents the feminine. Those two shapes fully interlocking into one another. I think that's kind of a quick description of what proper gender dynamics involves. I think if people really look at if they look at a relationship as something that you can design and then build and then maintain, I think people would be much more successful with it. And I honestly think that we would greatly lower the divorce rate in America if more people knew that. So what I mean by gender dynamics is just basically what, like, how does the feminine generally function and how does the masculine generally function, and how can you, if you are a man, maintain the masculine pole, and how can you as a woman maintain like the feminine pole, and how can you like keep your, like, the battery of your relationship charged. I feel like when one party steps, and I think it's, I don't know, I don't want to blame women, but I think it's often women that have to step into the masculine if like they're not seeming to experience leadership from their man, or they feel
Mm-hmm.
insecure and they have to step into that. I think that's where a lot of challenges come up in relationships.
Well, let's talk about those challenges, because what I'm hearing you describe is it's an energy, right? Like a masculine energy. And just to clarify here, we're talking basically like generally, this isn't everybody, right? There's generally masculine energies, generally feminine energies, that is this dynamic here, and then how those interact with each other in a healthy manner, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
how does that happen? And because it feels like to me that there are so many challenges out there right now, so many misconceptions out there around this masculine energy or feminine energy and what that's supposed to be, how that's supposed to look like in a relationship.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, I really think that some of it is intentional. I think that there are, and this is me playing, I suppose, a little bit of the conspiracy theorist, but I do feel like there are very large and powerful parties. Well, not large parties, small parties by number, by head count, but by wallet and depth of economic power, very immense, that set these things up like that. And if you, I haven't watched television or the media quite very much at all over the past 10 years. Um, but I feel like there is a large gender warping that's going on. People that spend a lot of time watching this stuff. I mean, you see a lot of these movies where women are kind of portrayed as like, well, let's just use, I think the last one that I may have seen was um, The Incredibles 2, where they're kind of, yeah, and they're kind of playing on this idea that Mrs. Elastic, she goes to work and fights crime, and her husband, whatever he is, the hunk guy, the big dude, stays at home with the kids. um so we have a lot more of that today, and I think that so many people are confused about it.
So let me just clarify. So, and it's funny you mentioned The Incredibles because I wrote a whole article on that after I saw it with my daughters about how it was just a not an accurate portrayal of a healthy dynamic in a family, particularly, well, two reasons between a man and a woman and masculine and feminine, but then also how it was not how the structure of family. The baby gets tossed around. Nobody wants the kids. Nobody cares about the kids. It's just really ridiculous. It's all about
Right.
the parents' jobs and how she's able to do it so easily, and he can't do it anymore because
Right.
he's inept and an inept father, et cetera.
Right.
But let's not even go down there. But
Yeah.
what I'm hearing you say is that there's just confusion in general because women are now more involved in the workplace, or maybe taking on or exhibiting more masculine energies. Men may be exhibiting and taking on more feminine energies or roles, and that's just creating a lot of confusion. And let's just leave the reasons why out right now. And I'm sure we
Sure.
can get into the feminism and where that's, the origins of that and where it's going, or what, where it is actually right now. But that's a whole nother show, right? But let's talk about that confusion around the energies and so you defined as the gender dynamics and the women. How do you feel that men and women can better mitigate some of that? Because I would agree with you 100%. And and maybe expand on a little bit more how they can take that into relation and have a healthier relationship. And since we're talking about talking to divorced dads and um, maybe being back into a
Sure.
relationship in the future, what does that look like, and what can they do to be the model and example for their children?
I think for guys that are coming out of a divorce, I mean, the first thing I would say is don't rush into it. Don't rush
Mhm.
into another relationship. You don't need to prove anything. You're worthy of love. Just because your marriage fell apart doesn't mean that you are a terrible person. Um, but I certainly think for men, it just kind of comes down to leadership. Like you don't you don't I think the best thing that men can exhibit is personal authority. And it doesn't mean that they have to be the CEO of a bank. They don't have to be like Donald Trump or anyone else. They can work at a tire shop, balancing tires all day. And, his wife could potentially make twice his income. But when he gets home, he rules the roost. And it doesn't mean that he has to rule with an iron fist, but like, for example, if say it's a Friday night and he says, "Hey, I'm thinking about pizza tonight. I haven't had pizza in a while. I'm thinking it'd be pretty good. Does that sound like all right to you? And she might say, no, I had pizza for lunch today. Say, okay, well, how about we go down and get some Chinese then? Chinese would be pretty tasty. And then we could go hit the pool hall afterward and shoot a couple rounds. And she's like, yeah, that sounds great. So what he's doing there is he is being a leader, but he is letting her be involved in the decision-making process. He's not iron fisting and saying, yeah, we're doing this and come on, woman. But I think a lot of guys can fall into this trap of getting complacent. I certainly did. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you should ever be complacent. And this might sound really sexist, but I wouldn't necessarily expect as well that a woman's love is always unconditional. I think it's easier for a man to love unconditionally than it is for a woman. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I think women are more wired to be conditional lovers and like have some sort of thing that they might want to get it. I mean, if not to get like overly religious, but if you kind of like go back to and read like the Old Testament, I mean, it wasn't really nice what the victorious army did to the women that weren't like maidens. I mean, it was terrible. So I mean, women have this drive to say, okay, whoever's the strongest, I'm gonna go with him, just to save my life.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding you correctly, when you're talking about leadership, is just having personal authority over your own life, right? So
right.
And that can be leading by showing that you are taking care of your health,
right?
Leading by showing that you're taking care of your spiritual life, leading by showing that you're taking care, and in our case with our audience, you and your children, or you and your families,
right.
Mental and emotional needs, what those may be, your physical needs, all of those things, but showing by leadership, by actually using that masculine, and this is where I feel like oftentimes is the challenge, and I know that this was the case in the demise of my divorce, is really trusting my masculine tendencies to say, okay, I really feel and believe this is the direction in which we need to take. All right. I feel like this is what we need to do. Not be overly authoritarian about it, right? Like you mentioned, or being, an a-hole or anything else like that, but just really having that vision and direction, and then leading in that. Doesn't mean that you're going to be right all the time.
No.
Correct. But
you're right.
You are taking and making the effort in order to do that. And that is huge. Whereas, that dynamic now seems to be where, and you mentioned it in the beginning of the show, where men are oftentimes abdicating that responsibility, and then women are backfilling it with their own masculine energy. And then so they'll start leading, and then that creates a dynamic then that is let's just say uncomfortable at best, right?
Right.
Then at worst, it becomes like a nightmare in the relationship.
Right. Yeah, it becomes like a vicious cycle. And it's funny when you're talking about that. I remember when I was younger, I had maybe been married for about maybe about 3 years, 4 years, and I was working at a bank, and we were in a cubicle farm. I was sitting next to a kind of a mentor of mine, and he had been in this industry for quite some time. He'd gotten divorced earlier and got remarried. And I always remember him because, his second wife was kind of a smoke show. I was like really impressed. I was like, wow, she's really, really nice to look at. But didn't try to keep my blinders on. But I recall him overhearing him say something about my wife, my first wife. She was like really beautiful when we first got together, and if you look at her now, it's like a real terror. And I mean, I think of my mother, and I right now I like look at my ex-wife. I mean, it's been about 10 years since we were divorced, and I look at my ex-wife and I'm just like, oh, what happened to you? And I'm like, I know what happened to her. She's still in the military industrial complex. She's still,
Okay.
yeah,
So
she's
let's
still
use
working
it.
for the man,
Yeah. So
basically.
I understand where you're going with this. Let's talk about that as an example then within a relationship, because then how do you mitigate that, right? Like we want to make sure, that our significant other, our wife or spouse, is taking care of herself. So as a leader of your family, as a leader of your relationship, then that's incumbent upon you to take steps. And this isn't like, honey, here's your gym membership, get on it, right?
Right.
Not something like that. It would be more leading by example. Let's go on some more hikes, or I'm joining a gym, or we're going to play let's try playing tennis, or whatever it is that you're leading through. Modeling, right? The modeling
Right.
way to do this with not only your significant other, but your more so even with your children, is
Right.
going to be more effective than anything that you could possibly say. Would you agree with that? So that's a really good example, I'd say.
Yeah, totally. I think there's a lot of examples where, a husband wants to start going to the gym, and the wife like complains and says, I want to go to the gym. And he says, okay, well, he goes anyway. And then, she starts taking, advantage of a gym membership too. So, yeah, I mean, a man is always supposed to be the leader. I mean, if you think about the term husband, and then you think about the term animal husbandry, and again, this might sound really sexist, but if you think about a husband, like a husband, he's kind of the leader of this farm, right? And his wife is second in command, and then the kids, and then I don't know, the dog, and then the cat, and then maybe the pigs, the chickens, the cows, like whatever the echelon is. Um, so yeah, I think it's really, really important for a man to take that leadership. And let's be honest, right now, like certainly in the USA and a lot of other countries, we have experienced inflationary pressures where a dollar doesn't get you much of anything anymore. And it's economically challenging for a household to function without the mom working too. And if I could go back, if I could get a shot and go back and restart my marriage, I would have been number one. I would have quit playing video games like
Yeah.
in my early 20s.
Yeah.
I would have gotten rid of that stuff, and I would have gotten like laser focused on a career and been really, really serious about it. And probably by the time um, of like my divorce, my wife probably would have been able to come home at that point. Like if I had had the proper focus and
Right.
realized that life is the game, not video games, like play the game of life.
Right.
Um, yeah, I would have focused much harder on like bringing her home. And I kind of feel like corporate America today is like it's the mythical dragon of ancient legends, like the Grimm
Right.
brothers.
Yeah.
And to defeat the dragon and to save the damsel, you need to get her out of corporate America, because corporations and commerce in general is kind of like war. I mean, it really is. If you sort of think about it, I mean, it's peaceful, but still you're trying to kill the other team. And it's like, I guess here in America, it's blue team Walmart versus red team Target. And they're going at it. for our consumer dollars. But
Right. So that's
yeah,
that's interesting about the get rid of the distractions, get rid of the addictions,
yeah,
and stuff that is going to keep you just like not on what your mission in life
right.
is, what your vision and direction is. I feel like what you just described is what I know that I went through, and the challenges that I had as a young man, not having that vision and direction, and then knowing how to work through it.
Hmm.
And then what we described earlier, which is just like kind of not knowing what we don't know and just kind of fumbling around in the dark. And then you have this big life event of a divorce that makes you go, holy cow, I really need to pay attention, and the addictions or the video games or whatever it may be, and then figure out. And a lot of the men listening, with children say, oh, okay, now this is a huge responsibility. I don't have a partner now. I am the only one responsible for them, particularly like during my parenting time when I hear. So I really need to get, my poop in a pile to
Right.
figure this out. And, and then you talk about, and so we've kind of talked about that, but I want to get into the marriage part of it too now, because you just
Sure.
talked about the dynamics of women in the workplace. And I hear women, particular single moms, talk about this all the time, which is it's incredibly challenging because they're going into a workplace, and you briefly describe what it's like, but it is very masculine in nature, right?
Yep.
It's structured that way. The hierarchy is structured that way because that is the hierarchy that has proven successful for these businesses. Okay. So
Right.
I don't want to get into hierarchical structures and why they are and all of that stuff in this show. It's another show. But then they're in that masculine, because they have to be, right? No matter
Hmm.
what job they may be doing. And now some jobs are more more suited for feminine energies, which is why we see that they're mostly going to, women are more inclined to go to those than the masculine ones. But then they have to come home and they have to be in a relationship, or they have to be with their parents, and turning that switch is incredibly, or like turning that switch off and then turning the feminine switch on is incredibly difficult and challenging. And then maybe add on top of it, you've got a spouse and that is not in his masculine, is not leading, and then it just gets all turned upside down and is very confusing. So all of that was to take me to my next question for you, which is, why then do you not think that marriage is outmoded?
Well, I mean, it's certainly. I feel it's not outmoded because in it's kind of a religion in and of itself. I mean, you could argue that marriage is like the most important institution on earth because all of the five major world religions have marriage ceremonies, right? And you know, the Bible says, oh, he made them male and female. Um, so we're kind of like half of a whole. And if you think again back to the yin and yang structure, like those two things, they want to fit together. I mean, if they were in a puzzle and they were cut apart and somebody walked by and they saw them together, I mean, I just couldn't help myself. I'd have to put them back together. But marriage is like, I feel like it's a sacred vessel. It's an energetic vessel that like protects. It puts an energetic force field around the two people, and then around the kids that they conceive and bear. And a lot of people have pointed out that there's like like a real kind of pandemic of children being born outside of wedlock. And no judgments against anybody, but there are a lot of religious folks and spiritual people that feel like kids conceived and born outside of wedlock are kind of open to demonic attack. And some people might say, oh, that's a bunch of bunkus, but
So if I'm hearing you correctly, and all religious ideas aside,
sure.
you're saying basically that energy when together is stronger. Like let's
Yeah.
use the polarities of a magnet,
Yeah.
right? When you're putting two magnets together, the polarities attract and are really hard to pull apart. So that's much stronger than each of the magnets that are on each of them on their own.
Yeah.
And so having this dynamic together creates a much stronger foundation, just guarding against
Yeah.
or assisting in the raising of kids, and
Yeah.
just sorting through, I'll say just sorting through life in general, which can be unbelievably challenging. I don't think anybody can argue with that, right? Life is
Right.
unbelievably challenging. And when you've got two people that have this polarity that is like attracts together, it creates so much of a stronger opportunity for success than each of those on their own. Did I
Yeah.
summarize that about right?
That's perfect, Jude. Yeah.
So if that is the case, which I would tend to agree with, then how do we get, so I think kind of the divorce rate has leveled off for the most part. I think the number of, if I remember correctly, my statistics, the number of people that are getting married is a little bit lower. Like the millennials is a little bit lower, and they're not marrying as quickly, or as in greater numbers. How then do we get to your mission of 90% of successful marriages?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think that I like to just go to astrology, honestly. And if the divorce rate has leveled out at 50%, I think you could make the cause that, well, astrologically there's about 50% that are good and 50% that are bad. Like I'll take myself for example. Being born in April, I'm a fire sign, and my ex-wife is a Scorpio, which is a water sign. I mean, I didn't know that when we got married, but I mean, it explains a lot of things.
Sure.
Fire and water depend. Fire, you could say, well, fire is kind of like electricity. So if you put electricity in water, the proper water, you can get hydrogen and oxygen gas. But I mean, that's a really controlled environment. Generally, fire and water just doesn't work that well together. But fire and air, now that's something that you can really work with. Um, Water and earth, you can make clay out of that. You can make bricks, you can make terracotta, you can make all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of how I see it. It's like, if you don't know anything about astrology, just sort of take your birthday and add or subtract 6 months from that date, plus or minus 3.5 to 4 days. And like, if you want to get remarried, like try to find a woman in that, in kind of like that area. I mean, it's not like, there's other ways, of course. I mean, there's other people that you can get together with, but
So if I'm hearing you correctly, is be self-aware about the not only the masculine energy that you're carrying, or and learning and understanding what kind of leader is going to be a positive and successful in your life and in your family. And that's not going to be the same for everybody. So we don't all hold the same amounts of masculine energy and feminine energy, but know what that is for you, as well as know other important things like what your astrology is, what you want, what it is that's going to be a benefit for success, for a successful relationship. Is that what I'm saying? Just which I
yeah.
think is which is great advice, Archer, because what I find happens, and maybe you had this experience also, is like literally when we go through divorce, it's so I call it breaking open. We're just broken open and wanting to understand and learn more. And we reference that a little bit in the beginning of the show, but then really getting clear on what all of that is, and then moving forward can give us, and I'm still doing the work, right? Like you said,
Sure.
the advice you said, like, don't start dating right away. I was like, I did not, I wish I had somebody giving me that advice. It was the exact opposite, right? Take that time, really learn, really understand yourself, create the vision that you want in order to move forward. And that learning part is huge, to know what it is about you and why it may have, why your relationship may have potentially failed, and then take all of that stuff and then move forward, hopefully successfully in a relationship.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, there is that shock. And yeah, I just posted a story about this a little while ago, but yeah, I really wanted, I think part of the problem, I think the reason why divorce happens so much is because, number one, people get married for the wrong reasons. Their love is not pure, let's say. Um, and Harville Hendricks talks about this. You go through the power struggle, and this is where a lot of relationships fall on the rocks because, mom's trying to control things, dad's trying to control things, and then they just fight it out. But if they can make it through that power struggle, and if, mom can listen to all of dad's requests for her to better herself and vice versa, then they've got a real chance. But I think the problem is a lot of people just run away from it because they're afraid of like an ego death. They're afraid of like changing themselves and what's going to happen to them if they change themselves. So yeah, and for guys going through divorce, yeah, you need to learn how to be okay with yourself and be okay with being alone and know that you're okay as you are. I mean, and we mentioned MGTOW at the beginning of the show, but literally you could go the rest of your life with never, having an orgasm again, and you will survive. You will be okay. And I'm not in any way like saying you should do that. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't get remarried, but
It's being comfortable with yourself before
right,
you can,
right,
bring that masculine energy to, properly fit into a relationship with somebody else who's hopefully, right, done the same work that you've done
right,
on their end, so that then that becomes that strong bond that you can build from.
right. And I use the Bible quite a bit, not necessarily because I have a church and I'm trying to get people to come to my church or that I'm proselytizing for people, but I just see like, the good old King James version of the Bible is just like, a good like thing to know about. If you speak English, I think it's a good thing to know about. But, you know, I was talking with a friend who was an Episcopal minister who had gone through a divorce, and he said to me, he said, people are always talking about the biblical definition of marriage. Well, if you ever read the Bible, it's like, what's the biblical definition of marriage? In the Old Testament, you got guys with, 4, 5, 6 wives. Solomon had 7 to 800.
Right.
And obviously, well, not obviously, but when you do get to the New Testament, I don't believe there's any examples of polygamy in the New Testament. But divorce doesn't have to be you don't have to look at it as a train wreck, like your life is over. Your life is going to get more complex and it's going to be a challenge. But honestly, if you take up that challenge and you fight through it, it's going to make you stronger and kind of more king-like, quite honestly. And, you could argue that it does give you the opportunity, if you want to start a new family. You can look into doing a blended family if you don't want to have more kids. If you want to have more kids, you can go out and go shopping in the younger girl market or the younger woman market, right? And again, I know if there's a feminist that's listening to this, they're probably sharpening their knife right now to come after me. But I mean,
Well,
like that's kind of the reality of it.
to each person their own, right? But I
Right.
would concur 100% that is difficult and as painful as
Mm-hmm.
divorce is, and challenging, because there's no question it's a challenge. It is a huge opportunity. It is a huge opportunity to grow as a person and to move forward. So if you can keep that frame of mind throughout all of the challenges, which I know a lot of the men are going through that are listening, that the opportunity is there, and on the back end, it will be better, and it will be definitely an improved life. But it's going to take the effort. It's going to take, learning and like self-introspection and a lot of what we just talked about.
Absolutely.
So my last question, will you ever get married again?
Ooh, great one. So yeah, yes, I'm looking at my watch to see how much time we've got. So I'll be honest that I vacillate on this subject. When I first got divorced, I was driven by anger, for lack of a better term. I was driven by anger and like wanting to prove things. And I thought, yeah, I definitely want to, I want to get remarried. I have a daughter now from my first marriage, but I don't have any sons. And I think it would be nice to have sons. So, I mean, I suppose I could adopt them. But I could do both. So part of me wants to do that, find another woman, get remarried, have kids, maybe have 1 or 2 sons, and like raise them with all the wisdom that I have now. I think it would be a lot better. I think I could be able to provide for them in a great way. So yes. But then, part of me too, the other part of me is like, you've got like 6 years before your daughter is legally an adult. And let's be honest, the way things are today, nobody just cuts their kid loose at 18 and says, get out of the house,
Right.
Go figure it out on your own, leave the roost. But yeah, I think of that. I think, oh, my daughter will be 18. I could very easily just go and do whatever I want. I can take my motorhome, go all over this great continent of ours, and then buy a sailboat and take up the flag of Captain Joshua Slocum and go sail the 7 seas. There's very much part of me that wants to do that too, but I could blend the two of them as well. I mean, there's plenty of families now that sail with kids. So,
so basically, you are open to it. You just
I'm certainly
decided
open to it,
what direction that's going to take. And I'll add to that is that men need to be careful and cognizant when getting back into it, because while all of the stuff that we've professed about it being a strong bond and relationship, the MGTOW guys that you've also referenced have lots of statistics, and there are lots of challenges and statistics that are out there that show that it's not a positive, beneficial thing. Excuse me. So do your homework, do your self-work, make sure to find somebody that's, potentially a good partner, and just be careful. And it's different for everybody. So,
right.
That's the beautiful thing about life. So Archer Avelin, I really appreciate it. Good luck on your mission to improve the marriage rate to 90%. I think that will be a fantastic thing for children, number one, and society in general. If any of the listeners want to connect with you, what is the best way? So let me just first, I'm gonna again plug your book here, The Sex Education You Never Received. We'll put a link in the show notes below. That's available on Amazon. So go check that out, because I never received any sex education, and maybe I could learn a thing or two, and I'm sure some people out there listening could as well. How else can anybody connect with you?
Yeah, if people just want to send me a simple email, it's archer@mensmentalmastery.com. So pretty simple, mensmentalmastery.com. That's my coaching business. So yeah, reach out to me.
Awesome. Perfect. And then last thing, if you found value in what we talked about today, please like us, please subscribe. If you are listening, then go to whatever platform you're on and leave us a review, please. It helps us immensely. And again, the Dad's Divorce Blueprint is starting May 9th. Go to dadsdivorceblueprint.com. And lastly, laser coaching. 1 full year of laser coaching, $997. If you have been on the fence for this or with coaching or need some help or need something through the process. And I think Archer can attest to the benefit of coaching. And this is like dialed into where you're going to get results. Click on the divorcedadvocate.com and schedule a call with me and let's talk about it. Archer, thanks so much. It was sincerely a great pleasure having you on the show today.
Thanks, Jude. Good to be
Take
here.
care.
Okay. Bye-bye.